Kiyra Lynn with the Morning Show After Show, and today I'm joined by Stella Bak herself, Greta Lee, and we're going to talk about the morning show.
Thanks for having me.
I was so excited to see you in episode 1, so I just want to really get into it.
Let's do it.
We'd love to know that whether or not Stella likes the term girl boss, because she is one, and would she really consider herself a girl boss?
That is such an interesting and loaded question. Question number one, we're not beating around the bush here.
Not.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's so complicated, right? Because I think on the one hand, she would absolutely have no qualms with identifying as a girl boss in like the fullest sense of what would you have a problem with a woman who is so young that she could be perceived as a girl being a boss? I mean, I guess like the way that I would imagine she would maybe like girl boss, but like in like an alt radical way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'd love to know from a business perspective, does Stella admire any of the sort of qualities that Corey has, or, is she just continually frustrated that he keeps blocking her from running the network the way that she wants?
And I think that what is so terrific about the way they've set up the show and the season for this character is we see her start out one way, and then we get to see an evolution. I mean, she's someone who came in guns blazing with no chill whatsoever, and like an extreme disregard for how she was coming across, because she had these blinders on in terms of what she wanted to accomplish. And I'm talking about coming from previously an online media company and catering to a mostly Gen Z audience, and then now having to pivot to UBA, which is a very different world, and having to interface with people who like the Corey Ellisons of the world, like Alex Levy, like Sybil, Holland Taylor's character, people who maybe she wouldn't otherwise rub shoulders with previously. And so I think that is the question of how much is she willing to sort of compromise and not compromise in order to run the business. So when it comes to someone like Corey, initially, though she sees him, she's like so unimpressed by Corey Ellison, which I think is so fun for me to play because, I love him so much. She sees him as sort of like a lame cis white man, which is hilarious because it's Corey Ellison. He's seminal. Like he's so beloved. He's in this incredible persona and character, that we've gotten to fall in love with season 1, and then to have someone come in who just does not care. It's really fascinating.
That being said, I mean, she hasn't been able to run the network in the manner that she'd want. Do you feel that, if Corey moved out of her way, coming from a completely, different background, as you said, do you think she'd actually be able to do a successful job?
I think that's what's the really like complicated and frankly kind of painful discovery in doing this. I mean, I had my own preconceived ideas of, okay, if Stella, like she self-identifies as this visionary and she's so exuberant in her like genuine want of making these efficacious changes to this environment. But I think even for her, right away, she realizes that it's just not that simple. And even though you can want big sweeping changes, not just for the workplace, but for the world, the way you execute that, it's not so tidy. It butts up against what you sometimes need to do to run a business, to be part of a corporation. And Corey is interesting in that he kind of teaches her these really tough lessons. And whether or not she's wanting and able to accept them is a totally different story. But that's what I can appreciate too about the show. We're really not pretending that we have the answers in any sort of way. We're really hoping the audience will come with us in moving towards a discomfort of not knowing the answer, whether it's, workplace toxicity or gender, racial inequity. We don't know.
Well, I want to take it back to you fangirling.
Yes, let's do it. I'm ready.
I'd love to know what your first day on set was like, along
Oh God, yeah.
unknowns, Aniston, Witherspoon, these, very
Sure.
low people on the call sheet. Were you nervous?
Yeah, these, really novice other actors that I had to, do some heavy lifting to just make sure that they were going to be okay. Oh my God. I mean, I think I'd like to pretend that I had like a certain level of like cool, like I got this, like unflappable kind of like, you kind of have to in order to, I mean, this show is unlike any other in that it's a treadmill set at level 10 and you are dropped on and it's time to run. Like the athleticism and the stamina required, like it's a sweaty experience, the dialogue, it's the way it's written, and these monologues that are the meat and potatoes of the show. So with all of that in mind, also coming in with these people I've loved for so long, and not even just like in a casual way. I mean, that was the name of the game every day, how to, be cool while I was freaking out inside and on top of that, having to play a character that was so antithetical to how I was feeling. I can't decide. Like, I think maybe in a way, maybe it was helpful because I had no opportunity. Like I could not fall into my like really embarrassing puppy dog fangirling. Like there's just, I could not do that. I mean, the first time I met Jen, I gave her a really sweaty handshake, which I'm still like, oh God.
I'm feeling you here. I'm feeling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love to segue into a fan question because
Sure.
it kind of sets it up. Marie Lorenzo from Seattle, Washington asks, Stella isn't a fan of Alex. And, she makes this convincing plea to Alex to say yes to moderating the convention. Do you feel that Stella believed any of those things, or was it just her play to get Alex to say yes? Speaking of one of those beautiful monologues, that was excellent on your end. I love.
Oh, thanks. That was a day that was like earmarked from the beginning of, okay, like that's going to be a challenging day. But yeah, I think that's the question that we're trying to ask with Stella as she progresses, as we see her over the course of the season, starting out a certain way, intent on doing certain things. I mean, we're asking, but what is she willing to compromise on in order to be a boss, to lead? What do you do to be an effective leader? Sometimes you have to take an idea that wasn't your own. You have to carry out certain things that maybe your heart wasn't invested in initially. That I think that was what was so tricky about that scene, but ultimately so gratifying and challenging to do with Jen, to show those turns in a real way. I mean, she did not want Alex to moderate. And even the way she handles Daniel Henderson, I think that I could imagine some people in the audience thinking, well, I thought she wanted diversity. I thought her whole thing was not having two white women. So, and then she's going to reject Daniel. But that to me speaks to what is so great about this show. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. It's not these questions that we're asking. There's no tidy answer. And I actually, maybe a controversial opinion, I love that Stella turns down Daniel. And because it shows that it's not just about diversity for diversity's sake. And she's having to juggle being to do her job and also what she believes personally. And it's hard.
do want to bring it back because, as I said before, I loved seeing you that first episode. I'm like, yes, there is an Asian. There wasn't an Asian on the first season, speaking of diversity. But, we've talked about this on the show, and I've been really vocal about it. I love that Stella is this powerhouse and she knows what she wants. And obviously she is this young, executive that has something to prove, but, I'm kind of a little wary because she kind of takes on a little bit of those dragon lady stereotypes.
Oh, interesting.
Really hoping that as the season goes on, I can see her more as a full-bodied character. I want to see those gentle emotions, maybe a softer side. I don't know. Maybe I'm, maybe from my lips to the writer's ears. Talk to me about what your thoughts on how we've seen her portrayed so far in the season.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, I'm leaving. No, I really appreciate you picking up on that. I mean, I think what was so important to me was, not showing like a flawed woman for the sake of being flawed, or a vulnerable woman who's, just like so raw. I wanted to be realistic about, why do we have this stereotype of poker face, dragon lady, made of steel, thick skin? Where does that come from? Is there any truth in that kind of a human, who, Asian or not, actually? And we're wanting to weave into Stella. Is there a reason why she has had to be that way? What was required of her in order to become this success? People don't exist in vacuums. So is there a reason why? And we get to see it. It's also like, I had to remind myself that Stella Bak is the new Corey Ellison. That is insane. And we know, I stand Corey Ellison forever. Like Billy's performance of Corey Ellison season 1, it is seminal. It is so, yeah. But part of what was so terrifying about playing Stella, and what honestly attracted me to it, was just to see that play out, that difference of, okay, there's a new network news president. She is the same. Is she going to be treated the same way as Corey Ellison was in that position? No. And that is a much more real and honest depiction. So in terms of like that, the way she starts off, and, whether you want to call it Dragon Lady or, that sort of like stoicism, the dryness, I guess like I'm more reluctant to attribute it directly to race, and more to, it's such a messy cauldron of ageism, also like this generational divide, like what you have to do to be taken seriously if you look young, and being a woman, right? I think that we're wanting to start out there, and then as the season progresses, without giving anything away, I think we do get to see some other things seep through. Whether Stella wants them to come out or not. And it's through the relationship of Corey and Stella, and also Alex and Stella.
What have you, Greta, been able to do to influence Stella as a character?
I wish I could take more credit for the way she looks, but Sophie, our costume designer, did such an amazing job. Also, first of all, we have to just give it up for Stella's wardrobe. I've never so aggressively wanted to just run for the hills with like an entire wardrobe. She only wears Chanel, Balenciaga, Gucci, Prada. It's insane. It's really insane. But it's not just like an arbitrary choice. I think what's so great is that's a reflection of Stella and how she sees herself. It's such a flex, She's like, yeah, I'm a boss. I'm successful. This is how I want to be portrayed as a boss. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to break some rules. I'm going to wear a lavender Adidas tracksuit to work.
We are totally out of time, but Greta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. And
And
congratulations.
we're matching.
I know. I was like, we called each other. We knew.
We did. We did.